It's funny, I don't know where an idea always comes from, but I got this idea, Captain Power, really, the name was the genesis in a sense. And then we, talked about it a little bit, and some of the guys at the office thought there was a little kind of phony sounding, Captain Powers, and plus I thought, well, someone must have done a Captain Power by now. But we checked it out and did a trademark search, and because we didn't want to do all this work and find out. And no one ever did Captain Action and Captain America and Captain Bravo, every captain, but no Captain Power. So we said, okay, I'm going to get that name, Captain Power.
Power on.
Captain Power and the soldiers of the future.
I think if I was to classify myself, I'd say I'm a storyteller. Characters begin to speak to you. You sit down and start writing, and the characters, they start telling you who they are. Jonathan Power starts telling you. You just happen to be typing, in my case anyway. And that's kind of how it evolved. In fact, the genesis for Captain Power, the basic characters and Sauron and Blastar and Lord Dread and all these things really evolved in one long night of typewriter.
If it was simply a series in which an omnipotent mad scientist were engaging human beings, I don't think that would be very interesting. Power and his team managed to survive each episode and defeat Dread and his team through human values like courage and loyalty and compassion, against which my forces are impotent, thereby defeating me, because my technology is worthless against this sort of courage.
Goddard is the ultimate pitch man. Clearly the success he's had in the years since Captain Power with theme parks and all the things he's done, that's not a surprise at all. He really knows how to prepare his materials, how to pitch something where his heart is really there, on the line. I mean, he has enormous passion. When I saw the drawings on the wall and when I knew what the show was going to be, and I saw Castle Volcania and the whole notion of what the potential of what that show could be, I was already sold. I was eager to work on this show. Gary didn't have to pitch me at all. It was like, let me at it. I'm ready, and let's rock and roll. What they had were these big drawings on the wall of Captain Power and the other soldiers of the future and Lord Dread, who at the time was called Lord Hacker. I think my favorite illustration of all was Jim Steranko was this brilliant comic book artist who'd done Nick Fury, lots of other titles, and he had this really cool image of Captain Power, which I liked very much.
In my initial treatment, there was not a lot of backstory about each of the characters.
And I was brought aboard to sketch out that world, inhabit it, make it into a show, change it from a series of drawings into a viable television show. And initially I was told that there would be a 65-episode order. So we were going to have a lot of episodes, so it had to be a big vision and a big world. And I was committed to the idea that this would be an adult show, that we would create it exactly as if it were an adult show. We wouldn't condescend at all.
If we didn't have a building like this, we would certainly have a hard time doing this on the budget that we've got. We've got so much to do, and you just can't go out and find an outside location of a devastated future city. You've kind of got to have an area where you can create some of these environments. And I mean, this is amazing, and it's a little frightening that we've got over 150,000 square feet, and we're filling it up.
The location manager that we engaged came up with it. It belongs to the city of Toronto. They were kind enough to allow us to lease it, and it's a fantastic area. We need every inch of the 100,000 feet we have here and more.
It was tremendously exciting because the scope was gigantic and there was different sections of it. The dread chamber was here, the desert was over there. We had a miniatures unit that was all to themselves, all interconnected within the building. There was a 30-foot by 90-foot green screen set up for all the flying.
You'd be filming you know, a scene, and then right across was the miniatures with the computer cameras that would fly through and all that. When I saw that, I never questioned whether these guys knew what they were doing.
The acoustics were awful, and you could hear straight through it. You could hear everybody working anywhere in the studio. We sprayed a lot of foam all over the ceilings and walls, and you know, tried to get it reasonably soundproof so we could work. But it didn't work. It was such a big project. There were so many things to do. Everyone was working so hard to try and get the thing ready and moving and on its feet.
I was, I guess, overwhelmed by the amount of effort and the cost. It seemed like an overwhelming project. Yeah, huge.
I really loved the show, really loved to do it. And when I heard my character could fly, it was the best thing in the world. When it really came down to flying, it was tough. It was really tough.
Come on, kid. Hang on!
The first time I tried on the harness, which was, I believe, an old Superman harness that fit right on your hips and had wires coming from it, so you were in perfect balance. It was great fun because it would take half of your weight off and you'd feel just, you know, terrific. You know? And they'd lift you up in the air and a slight movement of a hand changed the aspect of your body. It was wonderful, you know, great freedom. But when you were up there for 15 minutes and they had you like this, head down, your head started to swell up, and it was really uncomfortable. So I just couldn't do it, and they hired a stunt guy, and what a brave fellow he was, because he was up there for hours and hours and hours, working in front of the green screen, doing all the flying scenes. So yes, it's great to do a character who can fly if you don't have to do the flying. And in 90 degrees, when we were working, it was. I thought for sure someone was going to go down. They had buckets of ice, large buckets of ice and cloths in them, and every few minutes someone would run up to you when you finished a take and squeeze this cold water down your neck and rub the cloth all over you. Otherwise, there was going to be people fainting, and, you know, didn't matter. Didn't matter. It was the best job in the world.
So I thought that took a little of the edge of it. So he's not really like a superhero. He's not Captain Power. He is Jonathan Power. And All of the guys essentially assumed a military rank of some kind. The power suits were created for a reason, to help a human warrior battle against far superior robotic creatures. I also very early on gave him the credo that they would protect all life. Yes, they fight, they battle, but they only battle against these robotic creatures, which became biodreads.
There was a character introduced in the original draftsmanship and the original premise for Captain Power, Stingray Johnson.
He was going to be in the water, but he got cut early on because everyone was like, we can't do a show with a guy in the water, we can't have water scenes.
The problem was we couldn't afford to shoot underwater. It required a really big tank.
We're going to keep him in right to the last minute. The toy actually got made. I mean, so it was very late in the day. We just said, okay, we're not going to do water. We'll bring him in later.
One of the characters that we had, which we didn't get to do, unfortunately, was a character named Silvera, and she was a female robot, very strongly influenced by the robot in Metropolis.
At that time, there was a Japanese artist that was doing these beautiful silver women, you know, that looked completely reflective in metal, very beautiful. I was thinking that we might be able to create a female robot like that Dredd had created for his own nefarious reasons. I was thinking we'd just get an actress and they would be able to, like, you know, basically go right over her and do it.
At the end of season 1, she was going to be sent by Lord Dredd, disguised as a human, to infiltrate the power base, and she was going to fall in love with Captain Power and become a double agent and go back, basically ostensibly working for Lord Dredd, but really working for Captain Power to bring about his overthrow. And that, for me, that was one of the most interesting characters of all.
Falcor was going to be this CGI falcon, basically, a robotic falcon that he would have on his hand and he would release to go spy for him. And one of the ideas was that whatever Falcor could see, he could see automatically. CGI just was not to the point. The idea of having this CGI falcon that would land on his hand, and it was just like the guys were like, no way we can do that. I think if you look back, you'll see where we were in the adult zone, where we were at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. There were markets, I think it was Boston or Philadelphia, I can't remember. There were markets where we were right up against the new Star Trek Next Generation, and we beat them. We were beating them in their own time slots.
The fact that the fans did tune in and made it a point to try and find the show says that we were doing something right with the story.
It's no coincidence that Star Trek, in their second season, added more action. The first season, if you look back at the reviews of that Star Trek, you'll see it was very cerebral. It was all talk, very little action. They didn't have the Borg until a year later. There is no question in my mind that consciously or subconsciously, Lord Dredd and the Biodreads and the whole idea of absorbing them into the New Order, you know, this was at the root of the whole idea of the Borg. What I couldn't believe was how much they made the Borg look like Lord Dredd. And it's a constant series of frustration for me to, you know, because all these people go, oh, did you copy the Borg? I'm like, no, they copied us.
I'm Rob Coleman, I'm one of the assistant animators, and I'm just checking the timing of the first episode and just seeing what we're responsible for animating. We're responsible for a scene here where Soren comes in and digitizes one of the live action characters with his digitizing beam. Soren goes around and digitizes different people, and with the goal to create this supercomputer with all kinds of humans inside it. So that's what we're responsible for.
We felt Captain Power probably had to be an American actor, and man, we looked and looked and looked. We had casting searches. We saw so many people. We saw a lot of television stars too who wanted to play it, and we were seeing anyone from the age of like 20 to 35, and we were looking for that guy. Tim was the one. He came in and he really had the charisma, I think, and he had the energy.
I remember the day I auditioned for the show. The audition was down on Hollywood Boulevard, right across the street from Grauman's Chinese Theater, in a building there. And I remember walking into the audition, and they had all of the sketches up on the walls. And I remember thinking, what the heck is this thing? I was very prepared for the audition, I remember, and I felt like I really did a good job in the audition. And I remember walking out and walking down the street and feeling like, that's great. I got that down. I did a good job on that audition. And then they called me when I got home and said that something went wrong with the camera that they had filmed the audition with, and they said, can you come back and do it again? Then I got the part, they told me I got the part, and then they told me I had about 8 days to move to Canada.
I had 2 cars, an apartment full of furniture, and all that kind of thing. 8 days to do it. I've been so involved in trying to be involved in the show, in the job of acting and being here, my schedule, and what scenes I have to do today, and the job of an actor, that I had forgotten that this is also going to be a toy, and there's like a whole toy line coming out, and a lot of exposure and a lot of talk about it. It slips your mind at this phase, because you're so concentrating on your job. But when I went and I did a commercial for Mattel last week for the toy, and when I walked in and I saw these boxes of, stacked up with Captain Power, Captain Power, Captain Power, it's a bit of set you back a bit. It's a bit frightening for me. This is. Sometimes you forget exactly what it is you're doing. It's my job. I come here, I go to work, I moved to Toronto, and I'm still trying to find my way around the city, and yet here I've got to deal with all this in the future, I'm sure. It also made me realize that, I have an image for kids coming up, something I need to think about, something that takes... Yeah, I feel an obligation towards the kids, I guess, in the character and in my life, I think. I think it will change. I think being Captain Power will change me. And I think change me for the better. Ever since then, I look at the scripts, and if there's something that I don't feels right, I will, I'll bring that up. I'll say, I don't know. I don't think he should do it this way. I think he would do it this way, which is just all a part of, I think, finding the character, a process. And the fun part, the rehearsal process and finding it, that's, as an actor, is very, is much more fun.
I'm sorry we never got to finish our talk.
Jennifer, don't.
I love you, John. So much. Goodbye. You think of me sometimes.
And so we decided to remove her in what was actually a very moving sequence. When she hits the buttons and says, "Go to hell," knowing she's going to die in the process, but also take out the Power Central and the Biodread. It's a very powerful moment.
Back then, in any show, let alone a kid's show, the idea of killing one of your lead characters was you just wouldn't do it. And man, that had such a reaction. Fans were writing in, "Oh, I know what happened. At the last minute, the Overmind got her, and she's there, and she's going to come back," and all these theories about what happened right before that explosion.
I think to try and bring her back from that after the fact would cheapen it. Even if the actress, didn't want to come back or did want to come back, I would leave the character dead, because to undo that would diminish the sacrifice.
There are stakes, and sometimes the good guys don't survive, and sometimes they have to sacrifice themselves, and it gives a depth to the story and an emotional resonance and a weight, and it also informs real life, because in real life people die, and in real life sometimes the good guys lose, and sometimes there's self-sacrifice.
Power suits. Backup for mentor systems. She must have got it all up before. How could it happen, Captain?
The truth is, at that point, we thought we had a 5 or 6 year thing going. You know what I mean? I mean, we were sure of it. We thought we were on top of the world. And so then when they started to talk about pulling the plug on that, we just, we couldn't figure it out.
It was a difficult window because it took us a little while, well, who owns the toys and who owns this and who gets that? And I was saying, look, you got to give me these shows back. If you're out of the TV business, I want those shows. And I got the shows, but it took a long time to do it. And so it was messy. It wasn't negative. There was never a fight. There was never any legal aspects. Mattel actually was very, very fair. Joe, John were fair. Everyone was fair. It just took time. It wasn't something that happens. We would have needed them to say, okay, we want you to quit claim now, right now, because we're going to run down the street and try and get someone to do this.
As I finished up working on Captain Power, I looked at the production model that we had developed, which was really unique unto itself, because most TV shows, live action, were very expensive. They shot outdoors. They didn't have a lot of effects, because it couldn't be done. The V series almost single-handedly bankrupted Warner Brothers. And I thought we could take this production model, a concept like Babylon 5, and use Captain Power in a way as proof of concept. That you can take a show, shoot it in a warehouse, use CGI for characters, for ships, for establishing a world or set extensions, and make it work and do it for a price. Using the Captain Power model, we were able to do Babylon 5 for half of what it would cost for a network show using previous technology. And other shows built upon our model. Clearly, Captain Power set in motion a production model that has been used ever since then by both B5 and other shows. We never stopped trying on Captain Power. We always said, how can we make the stories better? How can we make the stories more intense so we can do more with the characters? I think that intelligence and that desire to keep improving the show and never settling for what it could be, but always focus on what it might be, is what made the show endure what a lot of shows did not. It really starts from the top down and believing in telling a decent story.
It was probably, one of the best times of my life. I look back on it with all the trouble that the show had and the hardship of filming that show. It's funny, after all these years, I don't really have any bad memories. My main thing that I value was the work we did and the people I worked with and the friendships that I made. And, those are the things that stick with you forever.
Captain Power was an exciting show for me to work on because I was going to be able to score the entire series using a large orchestra. But the tricky part was that I had to score the entire series without seeing one completed episode, let alone a few frames of the finished footage. We decided early on that we were going to do the music with an original music library. And I was going to write all the music for the library, and we were going to place it to picture. And we figured we would have all the cues written ahead of time, and then we would just place them in the episodes as the episodes were finished. Since there was no footage that I was able to see ahead of time, it was quite difficult coming up with the music. I was able to read several of the scripts, maybe 5 or 6 of them, and there were a lot of storyboards I was able to look at, and I saw some really nice illustrations. But I wasn't able to get a real feeling of the timing and the pacing. I just got a sense of what the show was about. All the cues had to be edited or snipped to fit the picture, so it makes for a less than elegant music edit, but we still decided that was the best way to proceed. It's so wild to think about this nowadays because now technology is so affordable. In those days, 1987, they didn't have all the portable digital workstations and software that would allow you to do that.
As long as this show goes, we will try and make it grow and grow. We know where the first 26 episodes are going to end. We also know where, if we go on to do 65, where the 65th one will end. And that will be a big shock, that one, if we do all those. And we know where we'll pick up and where the next group will go. So we've set benchmarks for ourselves. And we didn't want to be like a regular TV series. We wanted to really throw the audience for a loop. So you may see some of the characters, some of the heroes die. You may see, some of the major elements change. I mean, it will continue to grow, and things will happen, unlike most, typical series.
This was an idea that was definitely ahead of its time, and the technology was playing catch-up to make it happen. We can create this world now. We can really bring to this what I had hoped to bring to it first time around. It's a complete universe which really should be reimagined and brought to life with today's technologies. Now, really, anything we envision, we can create, and it would be great to revisit that.